There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. The Secretary will read the order.
Debate on vote number 34, Trade and Industry, including vote number 25, Economic Development Appropriation Bill.
Honorable the Minister of Trade and Industry, you are invited to the podium.
Honorable House Chair and honorable members, workers, business representatives, and agency heads who are present here today, fellow South Africans, it is an honor to present the budgets on trade and industry and economic development today. This is the portfolio's first budget vote in the new administration, and I will therefore take a few minutes to highlight our approach over the next 5 years and for this year. The two departments will be merged into one, a new renamed Department of Trade, Industry and Competition. The departmental merger process will be completed by March next year, bringing together 17 agencies with the capacity to provide targeted industrial and transformation funding, regulate the consumer and corporate environment to foster a vibrant business ecosystem, and open up the economy for real inclusive growth. The combined resources, honorable members, must be used to achieve the goals of the Freedom Charter, the Governing Party Manifesto, and the National Development Plan. Our debate today takes place in a tough domestic economic environment and with increasingly uncertain and fragile global growth, which require us to do more to change our performance and our outcomes. The message from South Africans to all party political representatives during the election campaign was, step up practical delivery, fix the slow implementation, and focus on jobs, growth, and economic inclusion. We will have to work very hard as government and as business and workers to speed up the journey to a strong, growing economy that creates decent work and entrepreneurial opportunities for many more South Africans, particularly young people. There are no quick fixes if we want to build a high growth, high employment, high inclusion economy. We are faced with these challenges, but also have many and considerable strengths that we can build on, and the support of South Africans to change our country narrative and to succeed in spite of the odds. President Ramaphosa spoke in his SONA address of a reimagined industrial strategy that will be one of the centerpieces of rebuilding the economy. An industrial strategy, honorable members, is a set of broad policies and measures undertaken to lift the rate of economic growth, stimulate specific economic activities, including through promoting technology and innovation to achieve what the economist Danny Roderick called structural change. The role of industrial policy is to unleash private investment and energize the state to boost economic growth and inclusion. This is an essential part of building investor confidence and the platform for job creation. We will refocus our industrial strategy over the next number of years as a central pillar of economic recovery through doing things differently. It's about good ideas, but in our context, it's also about good implementation. Implementation will be more disciplined and also increasingly responsive and collaborative. The merger of the two departments is part of building a capable state, able to do what it says it will do, focusing on practical actions, breaking policy paralysis, and coordinating across the state to ensure a good fit between incentives and outcomes like jobs and youth opportunities. We will speed up decision-making, create a more agile state, and inject a sense of urgency in the work of government. The forward-looking industrial strategy that I've spoken about must be complemented by an appropriate macroeconomic policy, other microeconomic interventions to ensure we have infrastructure, including affordable energy prices, and the skills to grow output and employment. And of course, social pacts to ensure we address social inequalities and job creation. Honourable members, visitors to Parliament today, fellow South Africans, I want to outline 6 areas we will focus on and 2 cross-cutting themes that will define our approach in the next few years. First, we want to expand markets for our products and facilitate entry to those markets. The single biggest initiative is the African Continental Free Trade Area, or AfCFTA, as it's called, which will connect 1.2 billion people into a single block where locally made products will be traded between countries with minimal tariffs. These agreements lay the basis for increased trade between African countries that can cement the continent's position as the next growth frontier. The implementation phase was launched on Sunday past at a special African Union summit in Niger, after 54 countries signed the agreement and 27 countries have to date ratified it. And it's intended to come into effect next year on the 1st of July 2020. The agreement will fundamentally change and reshape the South African economy. Already exports to other African countries support about 250,000 South African jobs, and it is the fastest growing part of our manufactured exports. For the period of this administration, there is an enormous amount of work to bed down the modalities and the benefits of the AfCFTA. Deputy Minister Majola will provide more details, while I will highlight a few key features. Starting immediately, we will finalize the tariff schedule listing products covered by the AfCFTA and the rules of origin, which sets out what qualifies as a locally made product. The outstanding rules of origin that has not yet been finalized include clothing and textiles, autos, and sugar. We will engage business and labor at NEDLAC on these areas, on the tariff schedule, as well as the rules of origin, and finalize agreements between all countries by the end of this year. So it's quite a fast and expeditious process. Over the period of this administration, we will develop new agreements, agreements on expanded trade in services, on investment protection for African companies operating in each other's markets, on strengthened competition policy on the continent, and on trade-related intellectual property rules. Honourable members, this is the work of a generation, a truly historic mission to realize the dream of generations of African leaders to build a single, prosperous and united Africa. But to realize these gains, we must address many challenges too, including building strong domestic and Africa-wide customs administrations, developing swift payment systems between countries, proper infrastructure connecting African countries with each other, and getting South African industry to be AfCFTA ready through a competitiveness enhancing program. It will need a Team South Africa approach, an approach between business, labor, and government. We cannot afford to be distracted by small disagreements when the opportunity to positively transform our industrial landscape is here available in front of us. Beyond the African continent, we seek to increase the volume of exports, but also to address the composition of those exports, to shift away from simply selling raw materials to the rest of the world and importing finished or consumer goods. It is said, Africa does not produce what it consumes, and Africa does not consume what it produces. We must correct this and engage with large trading partners like China and the European Union to change the patterns of trade and work with local businesses and public agencies to promote beneficiation. I welcome the announcement by Minister Gwede Mantashe to allocate 850 million rand to a beneficiation program, and we will strongly partner with his department and the science councils to take these products to market. Over the next few weeks, we will concentrate on finalizing terms of an agreement between South Africa and the United Kingdom in case of a no-deal Brexit to protect South African exports and South African jobs. We will engage the United States around AGOA and point to the mutually beneficial impact of that program. Honorable members, I've spoken about exports, but the domestic market is also important. ITAC, that's our Trade Commission, is currently investigating trade applications in a number of products like poultry, combined refrigerator freezers, plastic resins, and metal screws. We will refocus our trade policy so that tariff relief that is offered to domestic companies is accompanied by clear, enforceable commitments to invest more, to expand output, to create jobs, and to transform. In short, trade relief must be part of a package of reciprocal commitments to upgrade and improve industrial performance. We must respond proactively to the threat of a global trade war and the slowdown in growth in most of our major trading partners. Building the African Continental Free Trade Area and making our trade promotion efforts more effective and more strategic is therefore critical. We will work with other countries to sustain the rules-based trade order while maintaining policy space needed for South African and African industrialization. Honorable members, the second focus of our work is to support improved industrial performance, dynamism, and competitiveness of local companies. The President announced in SONA that we will develop a number of master plans to help create conducive conditions for industries to grow. This will include assisting companies to improve their industrial capabilities and sophistication, focusing more on export orientation and reclaiming the domestic market space lost to imports. A key constraint to growth is electricity pricing. We are working with Ministers Mantashe and Gordon to lower the cost structure of Eskom for more affordable electricity tariffs, particularly for priority sectors which need to be boosted to create jobs and inclusion. The master plans will be action-oriented, implemented through working with labor and the business community, and implemented in stages so that we can move with speed. In the steel industry, we will launch this year a support program for new plant and equipment in metal fabrication. We're meeting with investors on the development of new foundries and steel mini mills, including measures to enable beneficiation of scrap metal. We will make the 1.5 billion rand Steel Industry Competitiveness Fund more attractive and easier to use. The clothing, textile, and footwear sector has a support system in place that stabilized the industry over the past 8 years and saved thousands of jobs. To promote local fashion and jobs in the industry, we will finalize an industry master plan containing proposals dealing with the future of the incentive scheme, trade measures to address illegal imports, and value chain competitiveness. We start discussion with the industry during July to build consensus on a sector social pact. Honorable members, in the chemicals value chain, as a first step towards a master plan, we're mobilizing South African companies to supply 8 billion rand worth of goods and services for the Golfinho gas project in Mozambique, partly underwritten by our Export Credit Insurance Corporation. In plastics, we'll partner with the domestic manufacturers to identify opportunities for import replacement. The new auto master plan aims by 2035 to increase local content very significantly, from 39% to 60%, to double the annual car production in South Africa, to expand employment to some 220,000 workers, and create a 2.5 billion rand fund to support black industrialists in the sector. We're now also engaging the industry to bring next-generation car manufacturing to South Africa, such as electric or hybrid vehicles. Agriculture and agro-processing provide enormous opportunities for growth. We're now the world's second largest citrus exporter, and beef exports are rising. We're prioritizing export markets where we can grow, enabling new black farmers and small-scale farming to expand. And we're looking at a revamped agro-processing competitiveness fund to be launched shortly. The poultry industry is a significant job creator. We will work with producers to strengthen competitiveness in order to keep consumer prices down, and will consider recommendations that come from the trade authorities, their investigation into unfair poultry trade practices. We'll engage the sugar industry to address its challenges relating to a combination of imports and lower demand. Honourable members, the third focus area is to improve the levels of investment in the economy and help achieve the targets set by the President in Sona last year. The department will use its budget and resources to support the investment conference scheduled for 5 to 7 November this year, and to facilitate implementation of commitments. We'll send a number of export missions to other countries, showcasing South African-made products and help local companies to land new orders, including the Shanghai Expo in November this year and the Dubai Expo in October next year. Invest SA will be supported and upgraded to be a stronger one-stop shop to unblock obstacles to investment projects getting off the ground. The IDC will be refocused to provide a greater level of investment promotion services, including support to break into new export markets, particularly the FTA, the African Trade Area, becoming the center of industrial knowledge in government. The IDC has the capacity to be more than simply a bank. The corporation will be repositioned to be an initiator and facilitator of industrial development opportunities, with a mandate to manage programs, unlock investment and growth, and use its deep industrial knowledge base more actively. The fourth focus, honourable members, is to promote economic inclusion. This means opening up and changing our market structure, both through industrial funding and for new groups, and through competition policy. From tomorrow, the following changes to the Competition Act will come into effect when a presidential proclamation is gazetted. First, consumers and customers will have better protection against excessive prices by dominant firms in a market, with the law setting out clear criteria that the courts can apply to determine if a price is excessive. Second, regulators will have powers to investigate and address high levels of market concentration, where these keep SMMEs and black-owned enterprises out of the market. Third, worker ownership of shares of companies will be promoted through a criteria of expanded ownership during mergers. Fourth, small and medium businesses will be given a special status in merger criteria, market inquiries, and exemptions. Fifth, larger businesses will have a more flexible exemption regime in place to enable them to collaborate with each other to help expand South African production, exports, and develop new technologies and grow the number of jobs. And finally, the Competition Commission will have additional resources to facilitate more efficient operation. By November this year, following the publishing of draft regulations and public consultation, we intend promulgating sections of the Act that provide small businesses with remedies against price discrimination by dominant firms, or when dominant buyers abuse their power by imposing unfair prices and other trading conditions. We'll process the outcomes of various market inquiries and give consideration to the recommendations from the Data Services Market Inquiry so that we can bring data prices down, and the Grocery Retail Sector Inquiry to ensure commercial centres provide space for small players in shopping malls and for spaza shops to combine to source more affordable goods. Starting from the next financial year, we'll open up priority sectors through various measures by the Competition Commission to initiate market inquiries, complete cartel investigations, and initiate investigations into abuse of market power by dominant firms. An estimated 6 billion rand is expected to be raised in commitments from large companies to support the development of SMMEs and black entrepreneurs through merger conditions and the BEE Equity Equivalence Investment Program. This will be over the next 5 years, and to enhance the growth of black industrialists, We'll combine the efforts of the department, the IDC, and the NEF into a seamless and coordinated program, supporting at least 400 additional black industrialists with a financial support package of some 40 billion rand. The fifth focus is promoting more equitable spatial and industrial development. A pillar of our industrial policy is to develop new investment clusters through special economic zones, revitalizing industrial sites, and supporting business and digital hubs. Deputy Minister Gina will outline in more detail the specific interventions we'll make to develop high-growth nodes that can attract investment and progressively deepen the opportunity for South African investment, building partnerships over time with foreign investors, and learning from how other countries like China develop their industrial capability. We will dedicate high-level human resources over the next few years to the SEZ program. Attracting investment does require we address lawlessness and the destruction of property and unlawful disruptions of sites. Honourable members, communities must be critical partners, together with the work of the law enforcement agencies, to make it possible to build factories, to do production, to sell those products, and to employ South Africans. The 6 focus areas to improve the capabilities of the state. This means being more responsive to the needs of industry, moving faster in making decisions and carrying out functions, coordinating better between government departments and agencies, and creating a business-encouraging environment in which more investment and more job creation can take place. The CIPC is an illustration of what can be done, speeding up registration of companies from many weeks to 1 day, and integrating systems across the Department of Home Affairs and SARS. Yesterday, honourable members, the CIPC received the Global Award in London for the most innovative service delivery framework in Africa and the Middle East. I'm sure that deserves a round of applause. Part of a smart state is partnering with domestic businesses.
Honourable Minister, could you please take a seat, please? I just want to address our honourable guests. Ladies and gentlemen at the gallery, you are most welcome to be with us, but you are not expected to participate by clapping hands. The best thing you can do under the circumstances is just to give us a smile. So please, you can continue, Honourable Minister.
For those who cannot see, I see many smiles there in the public gallery. Part of a smart state is partnering with domestic businesses to invest in more innovation and R&D as new techniques, new products, and new distribution platforms can move South Africa up the value chain and enhance job creation. We will use private sector expertise too to develop and strengthen implementation capabilities in the state. In many cases, we look to the private sector to carry the cost of experts. The 2 departments have proposed a legislative program covering gambling, liquor regulation, consumer credit, SEZs, and company governance. I am commissioning a review and will make an announcement on the final legislative program by mid-September this year. Honourable members, these 6 areas that I've listed are not separate initiatives or programs, not silos. They'll need to be done in combination in an integrated way, one reinforcing the other. For example, increased exports to the rest of the African continent requires competitive businesses, a capable state, higher levels of investment, the AFCFTA, and opportunities from factories in industrial parks. Let's connect these. There are 2 cross-cutting themes for these initiatives. The first is partnerships with the private sector and with workers, with joint commitments and reciprocity. Not a state that dictates or simply gives resources, but one that sparingly uses national resources to help unlock the energy and the enterprise of our people. The second is to promote inclusion and transformation, opportunities for black and white youth, for women, for black industrialists. Inclusion also means making our government more accessible to communities, to young entrepreneurs, to new entrants. The department and agencies will be asked to engage in community outreach programs and roadshows to publicize our programs, to make it easier for people to use. Go to the townships and publicize it. The centerpiece of inclusion is job creation. Every agency, regulator, and program will be directed to review their procedures, their systems, and their goals within the next 60 days to see how they can enhance job creation. I spoke of partnership earlier. The private sector is a key partner, not an opponent. Our actions will support local companies to grow and to become more dynamic. Big is not bad. Large companies are an opportunity to build globally active corporations headquartered here in South Africa. But we will ask corporations to ensure more South Africans benefit through higher investment in factories, in technologies, in new products, in SMME development, through promoting decent working conditions with skills enhancement for workers, through expanding exports and our presence on the African continent. Workers too are key partners, not commodities, as they are our people and they're the very purpose of industrial development. We call on the business sector to avoid retrenchments and job losses wherever possible. We'll support efforts working with Minister Ngesi to improve the levels of worker skills and productivity, to facilitate sufficiently flexible work arrangements to enable companies to grow and to become big employers of labor, and to build partnerships at the workplace level that benefit workers and shareholders. The role of the state is important in creating an enabling environment for entrepreneurs and workers to create wealth, in investing in sources of growth such as infrastructure, skills development, and technologies, and in ensuring that the fruits of economic activity is fairly distributed across society. Honourable members, to implement this vision over the next 5 years, we have a considerable resources that can be focused more sharply. Our people, our budget, the capital base of the IDC and NEF, the capacity of regulators, and the resources that can be unlocked through private sector commitments. These can be used in a coordinated, transparent, and expeditious way. In the SONA debate in this august house a few weeks ago, I listed the immediate steps we will take in the first 100 days of this administration, where new investment will take place, what we will do in each sector. I reaffirm that, starting from this month, we will carry those goals out so that a sense of urgency is injected in our work.
Honourable Minister, thank you very much.
And I conclude with a call to Kauleza, Putuma, Hatlisa, Ons, Mut, Vakal. Thank you very much.
Honourable Nkosi can take the podium, sir.
Chair of the session, Minister, Deputy Ministers, Director General, and the team, ladies and gentlemen. Honourable members, the Portfolio Committee of Trade and Industry tables this budget vote report, which encapsulates Vote 25 Economic Development Department and Vote 34 Department of Trade and Industry. This is the first budget vote of the committee on the 6th Parliament, and I would like to thank members of the committee for the constructive engagement during this process. For the 2019-20 financial year, Portfolio Committee will oversee the budget of over 10 billion rands for the Department of Trade and Industry and over 1 billion rands for Economic Development Department. The committee supports these budgets. The budget translates the priorities of government into money that will be used by departments to deliver on the promises and to address the challenges of low economic growth, high unemployment, and inequality in our country. In the State of the Nation, President Cyril Ramaphosa emphasized the collective effort to grow the economy and create jobs through increased private investment to attracting both foreign and domestic investors, B, the channel of investment and support to the manufacturing sector, C, buying local manufactured goods in order to stimulate local demands and build competitive South African products to compete in the global value chain. D, strengthening the trade and investment relationship with the rest of the African continent, hence using opportunity brought by the African Continent Free Trade Area to improve intra-Africa movement of goods and services, capital and means of production, and developing cross-border value chain in sectors such as energy, mining, mineral beneficiation, manufacturing, infrastructure, and agro-processing within the Southern Development Community region. The Industrial Policy Action Plan, IPAP, which aims to ensure the industrialization that creates jobs through its intervention, such as public procurement, industrial financing, special economic zones, industrial park and African industrial development regions, integration. The EPAP maintains strong, creative, and nuance with the broad vision of the National Development Plan and the main drivers of the new growth path. EPAP sectoral intervention focus on sectors such as clothing, textile, leather, footwear, automotive, metal, fabric, capital, and rail transport, mineral beneficiation, upstream and downstream, agro-processing, biofuels, plastic and pharmaceutical chemicals, cultural and active industry, green industries, upstream and downstream oil and gas, nuclear energy, and advanced manufacturing. The budget for the implementation of the Industrial Policy Action Plan bears evidence to the importance. For the 2019-20 financial year, approximately 80% of the budget allocated to the program that implemented the policy. The Industrial Policy Action Plan has been in existence for 10 years with the objectives of promoting labor-absorbing industries, diversify the economy to support the manufacturing sector, incentivize the investment raised on manufacturing competitiveness, encouraging technology skills, absorbing diffusion of the commercialization of the innovation, radical economic transformation through structural change in the economy and in patterns of ownership, management, participation, and inclusion, and finally, contributing to the African region integration and industrialization. Over the past 10 years, there have been a number of successes. Public procurement had 23 sector products designed for local content procurement. In industrial financing, Industrial Development Corporation provided finance worth 91.7 billion rands for EPAP sectors. The Department of Trade and Industry supported 14,226 enterprises through incentive amounting to 61 billion rands, creating an estimate of 670,994 jobs. The Technology Innovation Agency spent 1.6 billion rands in a new technology development, which created 14,022 jobs. Special economic zones and industrial parks attracted investment worth 10.3 billion rands, which led to creation of 55,000 jobs in terms of sector-specific success. In automotive sector, EPAP intervention attracted over 40 billion rands in investment supporting 113,000 jobs, increasing the automotive exports from 41 billion rands to 171 billion rands. Clothing and textile, leather and footwear, EPAP intervention contributed to the stabilization of the clothing textile sector and supported 95,000 jobs. Agro-processing, EPAP intervention attracted 4.6 billion worth of investment and supported 283,000 jobs for the value chain. Business process services, 16,000 young people trained under Monyetla, with workplace rates over 70% since inception. Black Industrialist Program led to establishment of 251 million pure nickel sulfate plant in the Northwest Province. While the committee recognizes the success of the Industrial Policy Action Plan, including the recent development of the Automobile Master Plan, it calls on the department to continue to prioritize the implementation of EPAP. The challenge facing the economy requires significant structural changes, with the clear focus of the committee recognizing that the EPAP includes the imports, highlights the price inclusion of electricity and water, gas, and tariffs, dominance of attraction of ownership control, lack of adherence to the compliance of the prescription destination, low demand and global trade wars, increased domestic produce issues, industrial domestic and South Africa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Bose. You have exceeded your time, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Honorable Macpherson, you can take the podium.
House Chairperson, there's that old saying that you can't keep doing the same things and expect different results. However, that is exactly what our politics and economics have been doing for the last 10 years. Bound up in reverence for economies like Zimbabwe and Venezuela as our true north to economic liberation from the shackles of Western imperialism, our politics has morphed into a vehicle whose passengers are economic despots, who have learned from oppressive and murderous dictators, where battles over state-led growth, nationalization of the Reserve Bank, and nationalization of land without compensation are becoming the latest quick fixes to settle internal factional battles. However, in this quest to achieve economic freedom, which is nothing other than a proxy battle to regain access to state-sponsored patronage for those that lost out after being removed from former political parties and those that were defeated at conferences, there are very real and human consequences that are paid for by South Africa's most vulnerable people. They are the face of the 10 million unemployed men and women, of whom more than 50% are young people. They are the people who are locked out of broad-based employment opportunities because they don't have the right political connections. They are the very people who lose their job because of load shedding, red tape, continued tax increases, crumbling and archaic infrastructure, and unions who only protect the employed. These are the very people that government mocks when they refer to them as our people, as if they have ever had their interests at heart and own them like some latest purchase. Because the truth is that government has simply given up on the unemployed for whom life has become too hard. House Chair, this is the human tragedy that we must fix as members of Parliament if we are to obey our oath we took before the nation. That's why during last week's first meeting of the Portfolio Committee, I was incredibly encouraged to hear Minister Patel talking about what needs to be done to get our economy growing and creating jobs. The Minister gave a commitment to truly come up with a package of solutions for the sugar industry, the majority of which are small black farmers, which the committee abandoned at the end of the 5th Parliament by outsourcing its responsibility to the previous minister because, and I quote, they had no time. The reality is those that have joined the unemployment queue since we, as the committee, met in March of this year, were the ones that simply had no time. The minister spoke fondly about seeing evidence-based policy and legislation being developed that supports the goals of job creation, which would signal a big shift from the hocus-pocus stuff that spews forth from Luthuli House, wrapped up as conference resolutions. The minister spoke with great passion about partnering with the private sector to see investment in our economy.
Honourable members.
By a capable state that was able to spend infrastructure grants and create an environment that was conducive to private sector development to expand on the nearly 8 out of 10 jobs being created by it. The minister spoke with determination when he said that BBBEE had failed South Africa and required a rethink if we are to see truly broad-based empowerment over the narrow ownership and control model being guarded at all costs. House Chairperson, this is exactly what we were hoping to hear from the Minister, but not what his colleagues who sit next to and behind him were wanting to hear. Because it is these three issues that define and entrench the patronage networks that so many have worked so long to build and benefit from. Minister, I tell you today, you have a friend in the Democratic Alliance, should you mean willingly to drive these reforms. We will back you, Minister, when your colleagues will not. We will propose alternatives when they install roadblocks.
Honourable members, order, please.
We will support you when they vote you down, because you know, as well as I do, they can't stomach the thought of putting the 10 million unemployed South Africans before themselves. Minister, if you truly want to embark on this journey, the Democratic Alliance proposes the following. Table a manufacturing bill that cuts corporation tax to 15% on the condition that a percentage of turnover is invested in improving factory floor efficiency to drive down costs and to assist with creating jobs. Amend the 1978 Sugar Act to allow farmers to diversify their farms in bioethanol as well as becoming power producers. Finalize the 10-year overdue gambling bill to regulate the multi-billion rand online gaming sector, which we don't receive a single cent for. Table a comprehensive credit amendment bill which protects low-income South Africans from illegal credit, drives down the cost of credit, as well as open the unbanked market to new players to build up a culture of repayment and credit scores. Cut government regulation, which is literally strangling hard-working people's businesses. Minister, should you and your department fail to table these bills, then the DA will, through private members' legislation, put to Parliament. DA leader Musi Maimane has stated that the biggest reform we need to see is to scrap BBBEE and put an end to the rent-seeking, cost inflation and patronage network the system has become. We must develop a new model of empowerment that creates a shared value and future that all South Africans can be a part of, one that recognizes real disadvantage, talent and opportunity. And this is exactly what the Democratic Alliance is doing with passion and purpose. I believe, Minister, that the time is now, and we dare not miss the chance. Honourable members, it's time to stand with those that have given up and given in, and those that have become marginalised and discarded because of bad economic policies and politics. Because if we give in to those that want to maintain the status quo, which is most of you, we will have failed in our mission to build a better, more inclusive and more prosperous future. Minister, you said something interesting in that you want to ensure that the Freedom Charter, the ANC Manifesto and NDP speak to legislation going forward. The problem is they all contradict one another. In the Freedom Charter and the ANC Manifesto, you want to expropriate property without compensation and prescribe assets. But that's not what the NDP says. It talks about creating wealth and creating a future and securing property rights. I'm glad that you're going to be focusing on AGOA, but you need to tell the President to stop beating one of our biggest trading partners over the head and biting the hand that trades with us when he goes and says silly things like the United States is just jealous with China
Honourable
over
member,
Huawei.
thank you very much. Honourable Yakwo. Order, honourable members.
Honourable Chairperson, we welcome the decision to do away with the unnecessary Department of Economic Development. Even though we know that the decision to do away with that useless department under your leadership is not informed by any newfound perspective on how to industrialize South Africa, grow the economy and create jobs. You are the Minister of Economic Development for a period of 10 years, a whole decade. A decade of oblivion, a void, vacuum. A decade literally of just nothing under your watch. You became a Minister of Economic Development when the world was right in the middle of a financial crisis. And it was already evident that over and above some limitation of developmental economics, you were also extremely naive as a minister. Addressing an ILO gathering under the theme Africa's Response to the Global Crisis in 2010, you advocated for some misguided notion of a social economy as a solution to global crisis. And you said, and I quote, "The social economy is based on an idea that instead of a trade-off between economic and social values, there can be a fusion and synergy between the two. That not all economic activities derive their rationale from the possibility to make a profit." While you tell yourself this, white monopoly capital continued to use your lack of political courage, decisiveness, and direction to consolidate their position. But you were too busy with NDP, which warned you that it had no new ideas, no economic basis, and it was just a delaying tactic. But what are the realities of the NDP, and what are the failures of the NDP? The whole NDP idea is based on an annual GDP of 5.4%. And during your decade of nothing, you barely grew the economy past the 1.5% mark. You said to us by 2020, unemployment would be 14%. We're at a tipping point right now of 27.6%. You promised an increase in employment from 13 million in 2010 to 24 million in 2030, at the rate of which companies like MultiChoice, mines, banks, retail shops, restaurants, and all other sectors of the economy are retrenching workers. Currently, it's very alarming. The same can be said for industrialization. There is nothing we were importing as a country that we can say we are producing locally today. The free trade agreement that was signed recently must not be a launchpad for Europe and Asia products to move into ease into the continent in our harbors. We must move towards an Africa that produces and consumes locally manufactured products. Whilst we welcome the development as it's only a step towards an African sovereignty over production and consumption of local goods, this by no means that South Africa must go to Africa and become like Asia, China, and America. We need to change our industrial policy. We need to change our industrial policy strategy and focus on decentralized industrial strategy with the capacity to produce enough for imports to take advantage of the existing technology. We must establish multiple economic zones in various regions in South Africa with tax benefits on a strict condition that investors create real, sustainable, and decent jobs. The industrial development zones you have now are failing to create not more than 15,000 jobs. The value of investment at its special economic zones in various parts of South Africa on beneficiation, agro-processing, on parts of South Africa, and manufacturing must not be less than 500 billion. To achieve these, government must ensure that a minimum of 80% of all goods and services procured by the state, including all state-owned companies like Eskom, Transnet, SAA, PRASA, municipalities, hospitals, correctional services, are funded. We're also going to table a private member's bill to amend the MPRDA to ensure that a minimum of 50% of all South Africa's mineral resources are beneficiated locally, processed, and added to the value to the economy. Majority of shelf space in South Africa and retail spaces, including food, by the way, comes through our ports. We even import tinned fish. I wish your Minister of Finance was here. He would like to know that even the tinned fish that he makes and he cooks for us on Twitter is not made in South Africa. Let's ensure that the majority of food in our retail shops that is consumed in South Africa is produced and processed locally, including expanding shelf space to get as many locally produced products as available. Let's put money as a country into manufacturing of glasses, of cups, plates, of spoons, furniture, light bulbs, washing products, soap, all things electronic, building materials, and take advantage of the young population in Africa. Let us look at a rural development plan which prioritizes the growth in the industries in predominantly rural and neglected provinces, such as the Eastern Cape and Limpopo. Those and many rural communities in South Africa are crying for a chance to be seen. That is why any industrial policy divorced from the African economy is naive, like the NDP. The development of African content is inextricably linked with the development of South Africa, the same way Africa could not celebrate political freedom without the political freedom of South Africa. We must not be just a gateway to Africa's mineral resources. Instead, we should inspire Africa to maximize socio-economic benefits from the abundance of natural and human resources. But we must know that the 1996 Ascari project has regrouped and is no longer hiding the fact that it is indeed deployed on half of white business. We are aware of the path towards industrialization, which we have to fight as a country, and therefore we do reject this bill.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Sangwa.
Honorable Chair.
Honorable members.
Honorable Chair.
Go ahead, Honorable Sangwa. Oh,
Honorable Chair.
why are you rising, Honorable Member?
Honorable Chair, it seems that the translation services is only working in one language, and as our colleagues from the EFF seemingly doesn't have a problem to listen to a speaker speaking in English, they will undoubtedly have a problem when it is translated into English. So may I ask that that be fixed, please?
Thank you, Honorable Member. The IT will make a word. IT people will make a word to correct that. Thank you very much. You can continue, Honorable
Thank you
Member.
very much, Honorable House Chair, Honorable members. At the outset, maybe it's good to ask the question, why was this department split up to begin with? As cabinet bloated, so did unemployment. Indeed, we are coming from an era of 9 wasted years, which should not have happened. And so, Honorable Minister, we really hope that the new dawn will be a new dawn. We have been down this road before, of promises on one hand and perpetual policy changes and uncertainty on the other, and the results have continuously been the same. Whether it's been GEA, RDP, ASGISA, NDP, and so on, unemployment has been on the increase, and the majority of our people continue to find themselves living in poverty. What do we have to show for all these promises and policies? High unemployment, 10 million people are unemployed, dependency over development, corruption, inequality of epic proportions, and poverty. All this on the watch of the ANC. But one of the biggest challenges, Honorable Chairperson, has been corruption. And as we deal with and confront corruption in the public sector, whether it is here in Parliament or in other forums or even through the law enforcement agencies, the businesses minister that you encourage to come to South Africa must also understand that we will apply the same no-nonsense approach to corruption in the private sector. Our support for business is conditional and is allergic to corruption and the manipulation and looting of public funds through briberies, manipulation of tenders, and so on. Therefore, Honorable Chairperson, let me be very clear, and I'm glad I see that the gallery is full. I'm sure there's a number of captains of industry there. And I want to be very clear that if the private sector is found to be complicit in any public sector corruption, we will not hesitate as this Parliament to call them to account for their role in the looting of public accounts. So corruption being a two-way street, all those involved must be held accountable, because the revelations coming out of Bosasa are the clearest indication yet that this country is in trouble if we allow business to go rogue. Honorable House Chairperson, it's common cause that the economy is at a standstill, mostly due to instability and lack of decisive leadership in government. There is undoubtedly a lot of work that needs to be done to overcome the many issues. The economy needs a major boost. Inequality is still a major stumbling block, and we still rank #1 with the highest Gini coefficient. This year marks a quarter of a century after our first democratic elections. And according to the World Bank, we were measured then as the world's most unequal country, and unfortunately remain the world's unequal society today. Equally as unfortunate is the fact that economic inequality remains largely based along historical racial divide, worsened by intergenerational mobility that is relatively low and serves as a barrier to the reduction of inequality. We have a highly polarized labor market. On average, black South African households earn less than 20% of white South Africans' earnings. Education, reskilling, and jobs creation have a key part to play in South Africa's future to ensure it closes racial and gender wage disparities and develops into a more competitive economy. Chairperson, it is the direct mandate of this portfolio to promote the creation of decent employment through inclusive growth, and it is high time that we see a performance outcome on those KPIs. Because at the center of the economic agenda, the IFP in the main envisions young South Africans taking their rightful place in the economic trajectory of this country. In order to generate economic growth in this regard, we'd like to urge the department to see to it that plans for education and skills development are met if we are to produce the necessary knowledge and expertise which respond to the needs of the job market. It is important, however, to ask the question whether there is political will on the part of the department in particular, but government in general, just as opposed to just debating these issues, given the fact that we have been down this road before. So whilst, Honorable Minister, we wish you well in your endeavors, you cannot fault us for doubting yet again. The IFP welcomes the newly signed African Free Trade Area, and whilst many details are still need to be finalized, this is indeed a welcome move. Government should either shape up or ship out, because the majority of our people are desperate for jobs. I thank you.
Chairperson, Chairperson, besacela bandla ukuthi lo sisi we Freedom Front Plus umtshele ukuthi iAfrikaans ikhona ku1.
Honorable member, we are all honorable members, but I'm sure honorable members, I indicated that the IT people are looking into the problems that we have with regard to the gadgets. Thank you very much.
House Chairperson. House Chairperson, may I address you in terms of
why
rules?
are you rising, honorable member?
Rule 70, House Chair.
Yes.
While you're looking into the IT, perhaps you could look into this. My understanding of Rule 70 is when a member is ordered to leave a chamber of this House, they're meant to withdraw from the precincts of Parliament. Can you confirm if that is the case and whether you intend to uphold this rule in this House today?
Honorable member, I do not understand you. Who are you referring to?
There are members on my left who were thrown and asked to leave a chamber in E249 in the last debate. In E249, during the debate on public enterprises, they were removed in terms of Rule 70 and therefore are meant to withdraw from the precincts of Parliament. Why are they still here?
Okay, honorable member, I'll take advice on that. Order, honorable members, I'll take advice on that. Come back to you. Honorable members, order, please. A member has raised a concern. I have indicated that we'll look into the matter and respond later on. Can we just go ahead with the business of the day? You're welcome, sir.
Achtbare huisvoorsitter, achtbare minister Patel, adjunct minister, lede van die huis en almal teenwoordig. In die staatsrede van 20 Junie 2019 het president Ramaphosa 7 prioriteite uitgelig, waarvan die sleutelprioriteit wat toegedeel is aan die Departement van Handel en Nywerheid in lyn met die nasionale ontwikkelingsplan, naamlik ekonomiese transformasie en werkskepping, as ook 'n beter Afrika en wêreld. Wat die samevoeging van die departemente van Handel en Nywerheid en ekonomiese ontwikkeling betref, bestaan daar nog heelwat onduidelikheid oor hoe die dienende departement gaan funksioneer. House Chair, Honorable Mr. Patel, the Department of Trade and Industry is a key department and a key player as far as the growth of the South African economy is concerned. This 6th administration parliament is probably the most critical administration since 1994. It is indeed a make or break term. South Africa's economy shrank in the first quarter of this year, and investment confidence is at a disturbing low level. South African parastatals like the SABC, The SAA, Petro SA, Denel, SA Post Office and PRASA are bankrupt, and while Eskom, which is supposed to be the pulse of the South African economy, is staggering. Honourable Minister, through you, House Chair, you have recognized that the impact of state capture, poor governance and corruption on industrialization is devastating. I am referring to the recent study done by the Department of Economic Development that there was a loss of 27 billion rand and a loss of 76,000 jobs per year based on the assumption of a 10% overpayment on infrastructures. This has a negative impact on a lot of family members as well. Chair, time will tell that income inequality, the Gini coefficient, poverty, unemployment will not be addressed by BEE in the way that government rolled it out. BBBE resulted in black elite empowerment whereby wealth was redistributed rather than created. South African, regardless of who they are, regardless of race or gender, should all be empowered economically. State departments should adjust their planned outcomes in conjunction with each other. Amongst others, state expenditures should be limited, state-owned entities should be privatized, tax relief should be offered to individuals and business to stimulate investment in the economy and create jobs. The programs and planned outcomes of the department as set out in the report before the House is noteworthy, but Minister, poverty, income inequality and unemployment will not be irradiated by the distribution of wealth. But only if, and there's lots of ifs, the South African economy can grow, if state capture, corruption and poor governance stop, if electricity can be supplied to industry on a sustainable basis, if investment confidence is present, if there is a certainty about property and water rights, if the SA Reserve Bank maintains its independent status. Chair, without these crucial elements present, the reindustrialization of the South African economy will remain a dream. House Chair, through you to the Honourable Minister, the Freedom Front Plus will closely observe and monitor the department with its increased budget of more than 10 billion rand, the 2019-20 term, and the Departments of Economic Development Department's allocation of more than 1 billion rand. Then, through you, Chair, to the Minister and the committee, humbleness and respect is something that the Freedom Front values. And I must thank you in the way that you conduct your business in the committee, which is a new experience to me. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable the Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry. Welcome.
House Chairperson, Minister Patel, Minister Kubai, who is here in the House, Deputy Minister Majola, Deputy Minister Matlalela, who is in the House, members of the Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, members of the Portfolio Committee, honorable members, guests, good evening. Chairperson, the people of South Africa have just given us a fresh mandate during the May elections to defeat unemployment, poverty, and inequality. They trusted us to transform the economy and grow the township, village, and village economies, amongst others, and we committed in our manifestos. We cannot disappoint then. We have to make difficult choices and implement our industrial strategy, including the implementation of the industrial parks, revitalization program, and the implementation of the special economic zones programs and the Black Industrial Program, amongst others. On the industrial parks revitalization, 27 parks have been earmarked for revitalization. The industrial parks program is one of the programs introduced by the government in an effort to revive township and rural economies by attracting investors and creating jobs. The first phase of this program focuses on providing critical security infrastructure upgrades such as fencing, lighting, critical top structures, and other electrical requirements. As we are all aware, security is a critical factor that investors consider when making their investment decisions. Therefore, in addition to providing this security infrastructure, we will mobilize our communities around these industrial parks where they are located to take active interest in these parks. Communities must take collective ownership of these parks and protect them from criminal elements. Sicela kakhulu emphakathini yethu, sicela ukuthi sibambisane nemphakathi, sibambisane nabasebenzi ekutheni le investment engaka uhulumeni ayifakayo kulezi indawo. Uma sihluleka ukuthi sigade, bazobaleka laba batshali izimali, lama investors, and sibuyele ebubheni singakwazi ukuphumelela nokuthola lokho ebesikufuna siwuhulumeni. In subsequent phases, we proceed to address issues that include compliance with regulatory requirements, engineering, designs, and other constructions of new and existing roads, bulk water supply, and sewage treatment plants, upgrading electricity infrastructure in these parks. So that is the program that we are saying we are going to be doing in the next phase. Realizing the significance of the industrial parks in townships and rural economies, we are planning to revitalize 15 industrial parks this financial year. These industrial parks will provide crucial jobs for people who live in the adjacent townships and opportunities for township entrepreneurs and to access services and productions in the production space. In addition, because of their location, workers will not have to travel long hours and spend significant portion of their income on transport just to get to the places of work. Through this intervention, we are undoing the injustices of the apartheid area spatial planning. Honorable members, this government took a long-term view on the future prospect of the South African economy and decided to introduce the Special Economic Zones Program. This program is designed to accelerate industrialization in our country, attract foreign direct investors, facilitate the creation of decent jobs, facilitate the development of improvement of existing infrastructure, promote export, spread economic activity to underdeveloped parts of the country. Indeed, there are successes with these programs, of which Honorable Mandashe, when he comes here, will elaborate more on such successes. The Special Economic Zone Program remains an integral part of an investment drive. Some of the investment pledges that were made during the Presidential Investment Summit in October 2018 have started putting an actual investment on the ground. These investments include Marathon, which is investing 1.3 billion at Dubai Trade Port in KwaZulu-Natal. The investment is estimated to create about 1.5 jobs over the 5 years. It is expected that the Marathon will start its cell phone manufacturing, the first of its kind in South Africa, in September 2019. In addition, in the next 12 months, we plan to designate more SEZ, namely automotive SEZ in Swane, another one in the Northern Cape in partnership with Vendetta Mine, and the 4IR Innovation Corridor SEZ. We complete the bulk infrastructure and consolidation of investment for Musina Mokado SEZ. We are currently working with KZN province to explore the establishment of the clothing and textile SEZ in that province. We expect that this initiative will complete the clothing and textile master plan being developed by the social partners in the sector. Ladies and gentlemen, the Black Industrialist Program is making progress in advancing transformation in the economy. We are pleased to report that 50 Black industrialists projected to invest 29.6 billion and create over 16,000 jobs were supported in 2018-19 financial year. Again, we are pleased with the work of the BEE Commission in confronting the non-compliance with the BEE Act, whether by private or state-owned entities. The Commission is finding the Commission's findings on ESCOM for non-compliance with the Act are a clear indication of our commitment to zero tolerance on this type of behavior. All organs on state and public entities are required by Section 10 of the Act to implement the BBBEE Act, not only when they choose to do so. We have since referred the findings in this matter to the Minister of Public Enterprises and the DG in the National Treasury for further consideration in line with the Commission's recommendations. In conclusion, despite important achievements and challenges facing the domestic economy are immense, low levels of economic growth and investment, high levels of inequality, and high rates of unemployment continue to hold back our vision of an inclusive South Africa. We acknowledge these structural weaknesses and know that the magnitude of the economic challenges we face requires a new and stronger approach. We need to take extraordinary measures in order to realize the lofty aspiration outlined in our NDP. It is for these reasons that the new approach and the implementation of the industrial strategy Minister Patel spoke about at length need to be prioritized by all government agencies and supported by all social partners. We are saying when we need to grow the economy of the country, it cannot be government alone. Yes, the Department of Trade and Industry will be leading in spearheading that, but we call upon all the private sector, our labor, let us go through this journey together so that we can grow the economy of our country together. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Mr. Thring, you can take the podium. Honorable Thring.
Thank you, Chair. The African Christian Democratic Party welcomes the merger of the Department of Trade and Industry, the Economic Development, as this has the potential to enhance capabilities leading to a more efficient use of available resources. We note the allocated 2019-2020 budget of the Department of Trade and Industry at some 10.06 billion, and that of economic development at 1.05 billion. The ACDP concurs that the strengthening of intra-Africa trade and the promotion of economic integration must form a key part of the strategic objectives of the departments. Africa is set to become the next economic growth point after China, and the protagonist role of DTI in unlocking the potential of industry and business in South Africa is astronomical. The ACDP welcomes the comments made in the report of the Auditor General for the Department's 2017-18 financial year when he said there is a growing trend, and I quote, there is a growing trend of clean audits within the department. However, Chairperson, in our pre-budget committee meetings, the ACDP, amongst the many concerns that we raised the concern that the audit outcomes excluded the entities of the South African Bureau of Standards and the National Regulator for Compulsory Standards. Had these two entities been included, it would have led to a different audit outcome. The ACDP will continue to monitor and hold these entities to account. The ACDP also raised its concern over the failure to fully implement our beneficiation policies. This against the backdrop that South Africa's total mineral reserves remain some of the world's most valuable, with an estimated worth of some 36 trillion in platinum, gold, iron ore, and coal. That 36 trillion is some 7 times the value of our GDP. As a country, we are estimated to have the world's 5th largest mining sector in terms of GDP value. We cannot continue to be exporters of our precious raw materials and importers of finished products, thereby creating jobs beyond the borders of South Africa. We must move away from being a consumerist society to becoming producers and exporters of quality finished products. Beneficiation should not remain a tag, a policy, a dream. Beneficiation must become a reality. Failure to do so will relegate our some 10 million unemployed to the pits of despair and despondency. Failure to implement beneficiation optimally contributes to increased levels of poverty, inequality, and unemployment, leading to a stagnant economy with little or no local and foreign direct investment. Failure, Chair, to deal with corruption. Failure to deal with fraud, wherever it is found, is a crime in itself, because corruption hurts the poor. Corruption steals from the poor. Corruption destroys the poor. Corruption, if allowed to continue, will ultimately kill the poor. Those who are corrupt are the greatest enemies of the poor. If DTI wishes to realize its sustainable development goals of building resilient infrastructure and promoting inclusive, sustainable industrialization and fostering innovation, then it must be known as an implementer
Mr. Thring,
and not just
Honorable
a dreamer.
Thring.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Mr. Cuthbert, you're welcome to take the podium on your maiden speech. Good luck.
Thank you, Chair. Honourable Chairperson, our beautiful country is on the brink of total economic collapse. The GDP figures released for Q1 of 2019 show that the South African economy has contracted by 3.2%, its worst performance in 10 years. To add insult to injury, 7 out of 10 economic sectors found themselves in decline, including the former backbone of our economy, manufacturing. Furthermore, exports are down 26.4%, and the much vaunted South African automotive industry found itself on the receiving end of decline too. The unfortunate reality is that this speech reads more like a eulogy to our once mighty economy than a parliamentary speech. While Minister Patel has been making all the right noises in terms of private sector involvement and economic growth, the individuals he surrounded himself with are questionable, to say the least. Let's start with Deputy Minister Fikile Majola, who, according to the Parliamentary Interest Register for 2018-2019, accepted a BMW X5 worth 864,000 Rand from the union Nahawu. This could never be a conflict of interest, as we know how good unionists are at championing economic reform. Moving on swiftly, we arrive at the Acting Director General of the Department of Economic Development, Mr. Mondi Tom, who, according to the Sowetan, received a golden handshake of 4 million Rand from the Eastern Cape Provincial Government for having, and I quote, been charged with negligence and with breaching statutory and contractual duties while in charge of provincial funds, and failure to exercise adequate control over provincial budget in 2004-2005. However, it did not stop there, as Mr. Tom later reappeared in a new scandal in which his team were found to have spent 12 million Rand on hotels and travel expenses during their tenure as members of the Limpopo intervention team. It must also be noted, due to the imminent risks posed by five-star hotels and French champagne, Mr. Tom also required a 24-hour-a-day security detail. Surely one couldn't have mustered together a more eclectic group of growth-eating zombies around the decision-making table. However, it is not all doom and gloom. There is a chance for economic revival. And no, we have not enlisted the services of Pastor Alf Lukau. Rather, the answer is in the Democratic Alliance, a party who truly champions economic growth and development. Under a DA-led government, the red carpet would be rolled out for business, and job-killing regulations enforced by the present-day government would be relegated to the history books where they belong. Firstly, it would include a budget that prioritizes incentives for both local and foreign businesses who choose South Africa as their investment destination. In this respect, we support the department's call for an increase in budget for incentives, which have progressively declined in their share of total budget since the 2016-2017 financial year, from 6.89 billion to 6.02 billion Rand. Secondly, we would look at the feasibility of certain tariffs and surcharges which hamper international trade. As a market-led economy, South Africa should look towards developing comparative advantage in specialized sectors of the economy instead of trying to protect uncompetitive goods. Thirdly, the department needs to interrogate the ease of doing business in our country, as South Africa ranks 82 out of 190 countries across the globe. We should aim to compete with our African counterparts, Mauritius and Rwanda, who rank 20 and 29 respectively. This requires the simplification of starting a business, registration with the relevant authorities, and the revision of labor laws that are unashamedly anti-growth. Lastly, we will be monitoring the commitments made by Minister Patel during his SONA response last month with a keen eye. In particular, his commitment to drop data prices within 5 months, as it is well documented that increased connectivity not only empowers job seekers, but serves as a major catalyst for growth. We need to face the reality that our economy is on life support, and only the DA can bring it back to life. I thank you. And to the Honourable Boswell Wilkie sitting in the red suit, I appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Honourable Chair. Honourable Chair.
What is your point of order, Honourable Member?
No, I'm just checking who is the Honourable Boswell Wilkie.
Honourable Member, you are out of order. Thank you very much. Order, please. Honourable members. Honourable members, order, please. See, at times it becomes very difficult as a chair to get involved in a particular dispute between members. Especially when a member is afforded the courtesy of being making a maiden speech. It is to try and moderate the attacks. But if a member also goes on an offensive, then you open yourself up to counter attacks. So do consider, do think about that, members. Shall we continue? Honourable Hermans, you are allowed.
Honourable House Chairperson, Ministers and Deputy Ministers present, Honourable Members, the DGs and their team, comrades and friends, and most importantly, our guest in the gallery. The African National Congress supports Budget Vote 25 and 34 of Economic Development and Trade and Industry. I will be speaking on the entities of the department, but let me just share with my friends on the left, on my left. I heard a man saying on the radio this morning, we want Parliament to be united so that we can get things done in this country. It was a clear and simple cry from citizens for political maturity and a vision of a government united to build a better South Africa. And I wish the sixth Parliament can remember that as we deliberate. The ANC welcomes the budget allocated to the entities of the department to ensure that they support the mandate of the department. In particular, the ANC supports the transfer to National Metrology Institute of South Africa of 150 million for its operations. This organization is critical as it forms the foundation to ensure that measurements performed nationally are accurate and internationally acceptable. The ANC welcomes the additional funding to the value of 129 million for capital expenditure. One of the challenges that this organization, NIMISA, faces is aging infrastructure and had for long called on the committee for additional funding for infrastructure upgrades. Further, the ANC welcomes and supports the continued budget support for infrastructure upgrades in the medium term. Over the past 5 years, NIMISA has performed well by meeting all its targets and has had an unqualified audit. This is applauded. The role played by the national regulator for compulsory specifications is essential for public health and safety, environmental protection, and fair trade. The role of the NRCS is to develop compulsory specifications and technical regulations that producers, retailers, importers need to comply with to ensure that products are safe. The NRCS develops and administers compulsory specifications for these sectors. For instance, they ensure that food that we eat is safe to eat and that cars that we drive are safe. Over the past 5 years, one of the many key challenges the NRCS had was the timely issuing of letters of authority, LOS, particularly in the electrotechnical sector. LOAs, yes, thank you very much, Member. The ANC welcomes the progress made by the NRCS over the past 2 years to ensure that it eradicates the backlog of LOAs and that LOAs are processed faster. The NRCS has had a technical qualification which led to a qualified audit. Due to inadequate systems of revenue collections from levies, the ANC welcomes, though, the progress made by the NRCS working with the Auditor General to resolve this matter. The ANC also welcomes the development of an IT system as a long-term solution to improve the estimation of revenue from levies and to automate its operations. The South African Bureau of Standards develops, maintains, and promotes voluntary national standards. It is the government entity responsible for local content verification in relation to government procurement of designated products. It also houses the Design Institute. This institute has been actively involved in nurturing young designers and innovators to develop their ideas into marketable products. However, due to poor governance by the board, the former minister speedily removed the board and placed them under administration. The co-administrators have presented a turnaround strategy to Parliament, which the ANC welcomes and supports. The ANC welcomes the budget allocations to the DTI's consumer protection entities, namely the National Consumer Commission, the National Credit Regulator, and the National Consumer Tribunal. Consumer protection has been one of the critical areas of the mandate of the department that includes regulation for consumer credit. The NCC's role in broad consumer protection cannot be understated. It ensures compliance with the Consumer Protection Act. The NCC has been working with Independent Communications Authority of South Africa to address the expiry date of data vouchers, for instance. It is also responsible for monitoring and overseeing recalls of consumer goods that are found to be defective and unsafe, such as the Ford Cougar recall and the recall of cold meat products during the listeriosis outbreak. With respect to audit outcomes by the Auditor General, the NCC has improved from qualified audit findings in 2015, 16, and 17 to an unqualified audit in 2018. This is greatly welcome as a sign of improvement in the management of the NCC. The NCC will receive a budget allocation of 58.3 million for 2019-20, a significant decrease from the 69.6 million in the previous financial year. The ANC acknowledges the fiscal constraints and the need to do more with less. Therefore, it supports this budget allocation. The ANC looks forward to the committee bill on debt intervention, the National Credit Amendment Bill, to be enacted and implemented by the National Credit Regulator and the National Consumer Tribunal. This bill will alleviate the burden of low-income earners who are trapped in debt, well, that means they are over-indebted, by giving them access to free debt review type intervention to rearrange their debt. This will make it more affordable for individuals to pay off their loans.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, House Chair.
The Honorable Deputy Minister, you're most welcome. Order, honorable members.
Honorable Chairperson, Ministers Ibrahim Patel and Kubai Ngubani, Deputy Ministers Gina and Masalela, Chief Whip of the Majority Party, Director General and other officials,
Order, honorable members.
leaders of the different agencies, leaders of business and labor, distinguished guests. Today, the DTIC team led by Minister Patel is presenting its first budget vote of the sixth administration as part of government's collective effort to eradicate the scourge of poverty and unemployment faced by our people. This budget vote takes place during a very difficult and challenging period. Our people continue to endure socioeconomic hardships. The economy contracted by 3.2% in the first quarter. Youth unemployment rate rose to 55.2%, with the overall unemployment rate rising to 27.6%. The masses of our people remain trapped in poverty. Criminals terrorize our communities. Women and children are the biggest victims of gender-based violence. Honorable members, I make reference to these challenges to underline the fact that we shall overcome. We shall overcome because we are the resilient people of Nelson Mandela, Oliver Tambo, Kwame Nkrumah, and many other giants of the African continent. Indeed, we are the generation that shall reaffirm Africa's rise from the ashes as we pursue our vision of the Africa we want. Honorable Chair, it feels great to have led a delegation to the 8th meeting of African Ministers of Trade in Ethiopia last month. It was again a humbling experience to be part of the delegation led by Minister Patel to the Assembly of Heads of State of the African Union held in Niamey, Niger last week to witness the historic moment of the official launch of the operational phase of the African Continental Free Trade Area. The launch of the AFCFTA in Kigali, Rwanda in March last year was a milestone that marked Africa's commitment to the creation of an integrated, diversified market of approximately $3.3 trillion with a population of 1.2 billion people. To date, 54 countries have signed the agreement. All member states are required to submit their initial tariff offers by September 2019. The effective date of trade of the AFC FTA is July 2020. Minister Patel, there is no doubt that the establishment of the AFCFTA can be a game changer for the local economy, providing a massive market for the South African goods and services. South Africa is already the largest contributor in intra-Africa trade, accounting for approximately 23% of intra-Africa trade in 2018, with a value of 515.5 billion rand. South Africa's National Development Plan and the Industrial Policy Action Plan are fully aligned with the objectives of the AFCFTA and the aspirations of the African Union's Agenda 2063. Honorable members, we must be prepared to confront our challenges, inspired by the words of our forebear, Pixley Kaisa Maseme, who 113 years ago, standing distinctively in the hallowed chambers of the University of Columbia, boldly challenged Africa to a new way of thinking, the beginning of a new dawn, when he said, and I quote, "Yes, the regeneration of Africa belongs to this new and powerful period. By this term regeneration, I wish to be understood to mean the entrance into a new life, embracing the diverse phases of a higher, complex existence," I close quote. Honorable Chair, we are now turning our focus to one of our strategic provinces. The Gauteng province, which currently accounts for a third of our country's GDP and ranks as Africa's sixth largest economy, has a huge potential to cement its position as Africa's principal economic driver by mounting the most comprehensive response to the social conflict our country faces. In this regard, we want to make sure that the creation of new cities in Gauteng is about the remaking of the decaying industrial and historic towns such as Vereeniging, Vanabel Park, Nigel, Krugersdorp, Bronkhorstspruit into smart and integrated spaces weaved into an urban area called Gauteng City Region. This is an objective we want to achieve during this administration. We will support Gauteng on the following industries and sectors with huge employment potential: automotive, capital equipment and rolling stock manufacturing, agro-processing, food and beverages, finance and retail, logistics and warehousing, and the green economy. In KwaZulu-Natal, the province has a unique feature as it shares its borders with three neighboring countries of Mozambique and Eswatini. The government will focus on the strategic sectors of manufacturing, agriculture, oceans economy, and other sectors to strategically position KwaZulu-Natal as a lead investment destination and make the province a trade gateway within Southern African region and the rest of the continent. The two special economic zones of Richards Bay and Durban Trade Port are key catalysts for foreign direct investment. We are excited that in April, the province hosted the first SEZs conference to examine the functioning of SEZs and identify the key interventions required to improve their aspirations. We are also pleased to announce that the Richards Bay Industrial Zone in the province of KwaZulu-Natal will soon be paving the way for a construction of 1.3 billion palm oil refinery, which will boost the economies of Richards Bay, Empangeni, and Umsatus. Minister Patel, our budget must respond to the challenges faced by our people. We must reach out to the men and women of Emizamo Yetu settlement who are confronted by poverty. We must inspire the young people of Everton and Mitchell's Plain to dare to dream. Communities of Renacheng, Vanderbijl Park, Krugersdorp, and Bronkhorstspruit must continue to believe in the Gauteng City region with more job opportunities. The rural communities of KZN must believe they can transcend their challenges. We must continue to build a continent in order to achieve our solid objective of the Africa we want. We dare not fail. I thank you.
Honorable members, order.
Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair. Here.
Where?
This side. Yeah.
Oh,
Chair,
honorable member,
the honorable member, Kaula, left that seat there to go and do what she did there so that she can leave afterwards.
Honorable member, that's
And,
not a point
and
of
we
order.
know that you can't stand up and
could
just
you please take
speak
your
on a
seat?
mic without
Take a
recognition.
seat, honorable member. Order, honorable members. Honorable member, you are not assisting me. Please, order. Honorable members, may I get your attention, please? My attention has been drawn to a number of members who are currently present in this chamber, but who were removed from the budget vote debate on public enterprise earlier on. In terms of Rule 70, subsection 2, a member ordered to leave the chamber must immediately withdraw from the precinct of the parliament. So says our rules. Members removed or ordered to leave the chamber are not supposed to be in the venue today. I'm therefore asking the following members to leave the chamber in terms of the rules as indicated above. Honorable Lungwenya, Honorable Sonti, Honorable Kaula, Honorable Tembewayo, Honorable Madlingozi, Honorable Sonyana, if I'm pronouncing it correctly,
Chairperson.
and Honorable Yako.
Chairperson.
I would request you to hold for a while, Honorable Member, because I'm addressing
No, it's just, you see, Chairperson, the problem is that you are even naming people who were not even in that committee.
Honorable Member,
They were not even in the House. They were not even in that
I
committee.
am making a ruling. Could you please give me a chance? So the honorable members whose names were called are kindly requested to vacate the House.
We can't be subjected to your lies. Chairperson, Chair, Chairperson, Chair. On you need Mamelalo, Chair. Chair.
How do you?
Siyakuthanda kodwa che ukhe wasiyeka sakhe sabakhona. Sewuyaphela nomsebenzi. Siyabulela. Bye bye.
Salani kahle, the sleepist.
We will now proceed with the business of the day. Honorable Member Mantash.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister and the Deputy Ministers here present, the Trade and Industry family, honorable members, our guests in the gallery, and fellow South Africans, good afternoon. Whatever. In the State of the Nation address on the 20th of June 2019, the President of this country recognized the challenges facing the economy of this country, and that to address these challenges would require a significant structural change with a clear focus on the productive sectors of the economy. He outlined 7 priorities, which I'm not going to mention now because the Minister has done so already. But one of them touches on the mandate of the DTI, which is economic transformation and job creation, and a better Africa and a better world. The committee has been consistently doing oversight over the department to see whether their activities respond to this call. And although the department has many programs that seek to address the concerns of the country, my speech today will dwell much on evaluating the impact that their implementation of the SEZs and industrial parks had on the economy of this country. Chairperson, one of our tasks is to ensure through these initiatives that we create an inclusive economy so that we can address the inequalities of the past. And it is for that reason that we applaud the department for the creation of these special economic zones and industrial parks as a tool to achieve industrialization that leads to job creation in the South African economy. The committee acknowledges and welcomes the continued drive by the Department of Trade and Industry to designate and support special economic zones and industrial parks, given positive impact to job creation, especially in the former homelands where I come from. Chairperson, I want to table to this august House exactly the benefits that we have reaped as a country out of the special economic zones. Kucha in the Eastern Cape has 45 investors currently who have invested 11.5 billion and created over 7,815 jobs, direct jobs. The East London SEZ in the Eastern Cape as well has 32 investors who have invested approximately 4.6 billion and created 3,993 direct jobs. The Dubai Trade Port SEZ in KwaZulu-Natal has 39 investors who have invested 1.8 billion and created 3,508 direct jobs. Richards Bay in KwaZulu-Natal has 2 operational investors with investment worth 32 million and has created 97 direct jobs. The Saldanha SEZ here in the Western Cape has 12 investors who have invested 3.0 billion. 5 of these investors include joint investment projects between South Africans and international investors, with the rest being 100% local of South African projects. In 2018, The Atlantis SEZ in the Western Cape was designated, focusing on the manufacturing of green technology components and services, and is expected to create over 1,400 jobs in the Atlantis area. Currently, it has 4 investors who have invested approximately 68 million and created 324 direct jobs. Also designated in 2018 is the Musina Mercado in Limpopo, which was designated focusing on metallurgy processing, petrochemical and logistics. 9 investors committed with 14.1 billion investment. Early this year, the Nkomazi SEZ in Mpumalanga was designated, focusing on agro-processing, warehousing, and logistics. Chairperson, whilst we appreciate and applaud these achievements as a committee, we also raised with the department our concerns when we looked at the budget. We have observed the decline in the allocation for the investment for South African programs, the Invest SA. We are worried because we are saying we want to increase or to invite more investments into the country. But how are we going to do it with the decreased investment on budget on this item? Chairperson, we are very much delighted that we had established with the department the BBBE Commission. But the 171 million, the 61.7 million for this commission is welcomed by the committee, but however, the committee is concerned that the allocation would be insufficient for the commission. Yes, we understand that it is not an entity as yet, and hence we are pleading that it be given the freedom to be an entity of its own, so that it can continue to enforce the BEE codes for all businesses in the country. Chairperson, we understand that many people do not like this policy of the African National Congress, and in the committee we had a long discussion on it. But I can show the South Africans and the African National Congress in particular that this policy is here to stay, because it has not yet achieved what it was created to do. And therefore the BBBE is so critical, the BBBE Commission is so critical. Hence, if we were in a position to do that, we would request that it be given to more budget, Minister. Whilst we understand and applaud and acknowledge that the inclusive economy must encapsulate the employment of those people that were previously disadvantaged, especially the youth, women, and the disabled, the IFP, we will be on our toes to check whether those young people, especially boys, will not be molested. Comrade Clem. Yes. We are also applauding the department for the Black Industrialist Program. And we are very happy that 50 more will be created in the coming financial year. We had also questioned the department on the suspensions within the department, and they have responded to our satisfaction. Chairperson, I develop goosebumps when hypocrisy is displayed in this house. Honorable McPherson, it is so highly regrettable. Honorable McPherson is the same man.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. We now call upon Honorable Sheikh Imam to take the floor.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair, Minister, Deputy Ministers, colleagues, members in the gallery. Allow me to congratulate you, Minister, and your team, your appointment. Indeed, I think we are all convinced that you will do a good job in turning South Africa into an economic hub so that more jobs will be created. But let me address one or two challenges, Minister. One of it is the fact that I know the President spoke in his State of the Nation about locally manufactured goods. Good, very great idea. The problem is What I've picked up is that many departments are working in silos. There's no coordination between different departments, and that seems to be a problem. The same thing with basic education and sports. They don't want to talk to each other, so nothing happened. There's no development, and they're gone exactly the same thing. This department has a very, very important role to play in job creation and stimulating this economy. Now, and when I say different departments, because I'll give you a good example. If you talk about locally manufactured goods, which I've mentioned before, we have at the moment, and Mozambique, in my understanding, is a free port, for whatever it means. And from there, a lot of the fake goods come into South Africa. Our streets are flooded with fake goods. Say what we want, it is flooded. There's very little or nothing happening about it. Police is doing nothing about it. Home Affairs is doing nothing about it. It impacts on economic development in the country. How is your manufacturing industry going to be enhanced when all these fake cheap goods are coming in? So there needs to be coordination between the different departments in being able to deal with it. I'll give you one good example. There's a lady that I met, and she's spoken to, I've sent her to different departments here, rural development, environment. She's got this plant that she can grow in the Eastern Cape, grows very well, to export. And I promise you, Minister, she couldn't get anywhere with all the departments. Too much of red tape, or she doesn't know the right people in the right places. That's the difficulty. Only one company, one so-called foreign monopoly capital company in this country exports that product, that plant, and that is why I think there appears to be some kind of monopolistic control. But let me come very quickly to another issue. And I've spoken previously on the issue of price fixing in South Africa. Remember, this economy is still controlled by certain people, 3 or 4 people only. You know, if you look at the retail sector, food, motor vehicle, the mining sector is exactly the same. All these sectors are controlled by just 3 or 4 people. Now, let me give you a good example. Go to Pick and Pay, ShopRite, Spar, and the whole lot of them, you'll find the good is exactly the same price, 2 kilogram rice, exactly throughout the board.
Thank you very
everywhere.
much, Honorable.
That is price fixing in South Africa. The National Freedom Party support, but the Competition Commission must do something about these things. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Honorable Carter.
Honourable Chairperson, I would like to congratulate Minister Patel for conquering the commanding heights of the Department of Trade and Industry. This was indeed an impressive new dawn raid launched from the small but redoubtable outpost of what was once the Economic Development Department. But as he surveys his expanded empire, Minister Patel should pay attention to one of his more worrisome wards. I'm referring, of course, to the search and seizure-happy Competition Commission. It is time, Minister, to seize the moment and answer some searching questions. For the Commission recorded deficits of 78 million rand in 2016 and 17, and 69 million rand in 2017-2018. Its irregular expenditure ballooned to 126 million rand over the previous 2 financial years. And the Commission is mired in allegations of corruption, patronage, and anti-competitive procurement practices. I first requested an independent inquiry into these allegations almost a year ago to the day. This followed parliamentary questions that I submitted to the Minister. His answers revealed that Nzaba attorneys, whose principal partner, Anthony Nzaba, used to work in the cartels division at the Commission, received 72 million rand in payments from the Commission between January 2015 and August 2018. Nzaba's firm was channeled 70% of all cartel cases outsourced by the Commission in that period. According to the Auditor General, 42 million rand, or 1/3 of the Competition Commission's total irregular expenditure, went to Nzaba attorneys over the past 2 financial years. It seems that Mr. Nzaba is at the center of a patronage network at the Competition Commission, the overlapping strands of which extend to dawn raids, forensic services, and legal work. In February this year, National Treasury indicated that a forensic audit of these and other irregularities was underway. In fact, Treasury announced that it had put on hold an amount of 125 million rand set aside for the Competition Commission to investigate cartels pending the completion of the audit. Minister Patel has tried to play down the forensic audit. He promised that an independent panel led by Malachi Kanyani attorneys would investigate procurement concerns, but the truth is that this panel was actually established to assess the Competition Authority's capacity to implement the Competition Amendment Act. So the Minister is clouding the issue. Minister, we need to know the outcome of the forensic audit. Who conducted it? What is their forensic expertise? And what will happen to those who turned the Competition Commission into a patronage trough for their comrades? In a confidential letter from National Treasury to the Director General of the Economic Development Department, dated 18 December 2018, a copy of which I've seen, the objectives of the forensic investigation are set out in detail. I quote verbatim: determine what measures the Commission has taken to recover irregular expenditure from officials responsible and if any disciplinary steps have been taken, determine whether procurement of service providers when it relates to legal services and cartel investigations was done in accordance with the Constitution, determine the financial positions of the executive management within the Commission and whether any individuals received benefits, determine the source, flow and destination to service providers for payments from the Commission, and where benefits from service providers were received, how were they accounted for? Minister, seize the opportunity and tell us right now the answers.
Honorable Mboyane, you can take the podium.
Honorable Chair, thank you very much. Ministers and Deputy Ministers, Chief Whip of the Majority Party, honorable members, comrades and friends, fellow South African, the Chief Whip as well. The African National Congress support this budget vote 25 and 34. We dedicate this budget to our struggle icon who have shown the path to freedom. It was this day that the MK High Command was arrested in Leeds Jail, Johannesburg in 1963. These heroes of our people have vowed to achieve freedom in their lifetime. Today, as South Africans, we must always remember that the freedom we enjoy, as with some of the people on our left, they take that freedom for granted. That freedom was not free. People had endured long prison term. Tata Walter Sisulu, Ray Sisulu, Mhlaba, Gov, Comrade Lion Penstein, you can name them. Many have lost their life, and again, many are without trace. May their revolutionary soul rest in peace. Honorable Member, we came far since 1994 in making remarkable progress in building a new nation in which all South Africans have equal rights and broadening the opportunities. We have done much to meet people's basic needs, to reduce poverty, and to transform a devastated economy that was built to serve the interests of the colonial masters. We have gathered here today on the occasion to debate the trade and industry and economic development budget vote. On point of departure as an ANC is that the budget vote is an instrument to finance the implementation of the policies of the majority party in government. Broad-based economic empowerment is defined as an act of economic empowerment in all blacks, including women, work, youth, people with disability, people living in rural areas, people through diverse and integrated social economic strategy. Honorable Chairperson, the policy is meant to capitalize on a huge buying power of government and state-owned entities and use it to stimulate economic growth. Spending this money on local produced goods will increase demand expand local suppliers, leading to economic growth. The Black Industries Program facilitates inclusive growth, therefore contribute to broadening economic development and contribution to radical economic transformation. The DA chairperson, in its election manifesto for the recent national and provincial election, made some interesting policy proposals which deserve some scrutiny. Yeah, we can scrutiny. They talk about dreams of South Africa for all. Fair enough. Let's ask the question, what does DA mean when they talk of South Africa for all? If all they means people of South Africa, black and white, how does DA intend to create South Africa for all when the majority of the black people are poor, the DA is against the triple BEE? Honorable members, there's a strange thing happening in Western Cape. The majority of people who are poor and are blacks and are colored. Why? When it rains in the Western Cape, places which experience flooding and damage to property, loss of life, are areas of black and colored. Why? Most of the crimes in Western Cape happen in township where poor people live. Against, we ask why. The only logic answer to this question we pose above is that black and colored people in the Western Cape are not priority to the DA government in the Western Cape. The DA talk about inequality in their manifesto. What is interesting is that DA does not tell us how they are going to tackle inequality.
Honourable Member, why are you rising?
I'd like to ask the member if he's prepared to take a question.
Honourable Member, are you prepared to take a question?
I don't have that time, Honourable Chair.
He's not agreeing.
Honourable Chairperson, they argue that triple BE is corrupted and benefits the connective of the few. This is an indication of narrow understanding of what BEE means. Maybe the DA can tell the nation how black people have been empowered by the DA administration in the Western Cape and in South Africa. As the portfolio Committee on Industry and Trade and Industry will be force behind our government. And through our oversight role, will ensure that targets are met, corruption is dealt with, ensure that there's compliance with triple BEE legislation, and also all designated products are sourced locally. The ANC support the vote 25 and 34. Then, Comrade Chairperson, I quote the Nobel Prize winner, Ellen Joseph Sirleaf. If your dreams not scare you, they are not big enough. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Now call upon the Honourable Minister of Trade and Industry.
Thank you very much, House Chair, colleague Minister Kubayi Ngubane, honourable members. I want to start by thanking my predecessor, Rob Davies, who laid a very strong policy basis in the DTI that we can build on. I also wish to thank specifically Deputy Ministers Gina and Majola, both Directors General Lionel October and Dr. Monde Tom, and their staff, the heads and the boards of the agencies that are here and the regulators, but very importantly also social partners, workers and the business community. And I want to thank also the members of the Portfolio Committee, led by Chairperson Honourable Nkosi. Now, Chairperson, we've had a debate on the two budgets. And in the limited time, I'd like to respond to a few of the issues that have come up. And I start by saying that Honourable McPherson says scrap BEE or triple BEE. And in the portfolio committee that I addressed, I was asked this question about where are we with BEE. And I made the point that we've gone through different phases. In 1994, we all saw as a society the need for transformation, and the first phase of BEE looked at individual share ownership, typically 3%, 5%, 8% of someone else's company. And that was to bring black South Africans who had been out of the economy into the economy. The second phase was to broaden this, to bring in community groups and others, and that's where the term broad-based black economic empowerment came in. The third phase was quite a fundamental shift to promote the idea of black industrialists, black South Africans forming their companies, growing those companies, learning, battling there in the marketplace, and growing wealth for our economy. And I made the point, this is a key moment to rethink, are we getting broad-based empowerment? And how do we, in fact, make sure that we do the necessary changes so that the broad-based goal is fully realized? Now, Honorable McPherson tries to contrast that with the views of the members of the ANC, but I'm quite happy that we have full support of the African National Congress. In fact, the manifesto of the ANC says, and I quote, "Promoting worker ownership adds to broad-based black economic empowerment by distributing wealth to broader sections of our people." That's what we're calling for. Broaden that base, bring more black South Africans in, share the wealth of the country. Honorable McPherson talks about the human tragedy of unemployment, and I agree, every unemployed person is someone that we need to give opportunity to bring into the economy and give an opportunity to earn a wage, to form an enterprise, to be an entrepreneur. In the last 5 years, the economy created just over 1.2 million new jobs, net new jobs. And what the ruling party manifesto says to us is do even better. And so how do we do that? There's a number of things. Just to recap, we've placed industrial strategy at the centerpiece of economic revival, and it has as a core component job creation. It includes a number of I's: the I of integration of the African continent, the I of investment in productive sectors and infrastructure, the I of innovation and using the digital economy as a driver, the I of inclusion, bringing in young people, women, black industrialists to benefit and to create the jobs that we're looking for. Honorable McPherson talks about the gap between the Freedom Charter, the National Development Plan and the manifesto. I see them as being a lot more consistent and coherent. For example, the Freedom Charter says that people shall share in the country's wealth, and it calls for a national minimum wage. The NDP calls for a firm commitment to a national standard of living to be progressively realized. And the manifesto of the ANC then goes one step further and says, implement this specific national minimum wage in the period of this administration. Let me give another example. The Freedom Charter talks about the rights of the people of Africa to independence and close cooperation. The NDP talks about implementing a focused regional integration strategy. And what does the manifesto do? It calls for the creation of the African Continental Free Trade Area, which will boost intra-African trade, I'm quoting, build a bigger market over 1 billion people, and unlock industrial and infrastructure development. And then what does government do? We sign that agreement, consistent with the Freedom Charter, the NDP, and the manifesto, and we bring that to Parliament for endorsement. Honorable Thring makes the point that the AFCFTA should be the strategic focus of the department. We agree. We're going to devote more resources, more energy, and more commitment to, in fact, make sure that we can get this free trade area working. I also like the emphasis Honorable Thring raised on the need to promote beneficiation policies. We introduced a scrap metal regulation that will use local scrap metal. We're now piloting a platinum fuel cell project that uses local platinum. There's a number of projects like this, including in battery, the development of battery technologies, and Honorable Nkosi referred to one of those. Honorable Cuthbert makes a number of points. I think it was regrettable, Honorable Cuthbert, that the Honorable Member chose to describe officials of government and members of parliament as growth-eating zombies or as Boswell Wilkie in a red suit. Surely we've gone past primary school yard insults. We are adults. Society look to us to give leadership. If we have good ideas, raise those ideas. Insults don't constitute a debate. Honorable Cuthbert also says the South African economy is on the brink of a total collapse and only the DA can save it. The DA had an opportunity to put its views to the people of South Africa. It did not do well in the election. It did not do well in the election. And in fact, it said to the South Africans, we want to rule, and South Africans said no, we would like the African National Congress to constitute the government of the day. Honorable Cuthbert says don't protect uncompetitive goods. At the same time, Honorable McPherson says please support the sugar industry. And that's what we like. We like a pragmatic approach, dealing with the problems. So perhaps Honorable Cuthbert would get a little bit of help from his colleague to put the realities of industry forward to him. Honorable Yako made a number of points. The tone was strong, but I liked a few things that she said. First, I liked the fact that she read our speeches. That's a big help. There are more speeches, Honorable Yako. I like the idea that she praises the ANC government for the African Free Trade Area, and I like the idea that she supports a souped-up special economic zone. But I think what we do need to do is to move beyond slogans, and Honorable Hermans made an appeal, or referred to an appeal of a South African on radio this morning, that we must rise above partisanship and really become
Honourable
leaders
Minister,
in Parliament.
thank you very much.
And so I conclude by saying to the honourable members, we can do better. We don't need to be a high school debating society, and I'd like to particularly say today we have in the audience students from Heathfield High, the economics students from Heathfield High, and I'm sure everybody, the members of the House, would like to appreciate their attendance here today. I thank you very much. Thank you.
Honourable members, that concludes the debate and the business of this mini plenary session. We can now rise. Thank you.